Daniel opened the family safe to retrieve a deed for refinancing. Beneath it lay a second passport. His wife's face stared back, but the name read Maria, not Rachel. Never Rachel.
This isn't possible. We've been married 33 years.
The stamp pages told a story. Beirut, Istanbul, Nicosia, Tbilisi. 11 years of travel he had never shared.
I have never set foot in any of these places. What woman have I been living with?
He photographed every page methodically, as if documenting evidence for a trial that might never come. He returned the passport exactly as he had found it, the deed now forgotten in his pocket. He sat at his desk, the lamp casting a narrow halo over the wood, and let the silence stretch.
She built a whole life without me. I need to know what it is, but not yet.
The son of a Cold War operative once told him, "Trust is a currency you never spend all at once." Tonight, he was bankrupt. The next morning, Daniel Reeves dialed a number he had kept for 20 years without ever using.
Marcus Webb, Daniel Reeves. I have a delicate matter. Absolute discretion required.
I've handled discretion for 30 years. What exactly am I looking at?
A passport. My wife's face. A name I've never heard. Stamps from countries we've never visited.
Daniel placed a manila envelope on the desk. Inside, printed photographs of every passport page.
Maria, issue date puts this at 2008. The stamps tell a story: Beirut, Nicosia, Tbilisi. This isn't casual tourism.
I want everything. Her real identity, financial trail, travel records. No guesses, Marcus. Verified facts.
Give me a week. I'll see everything she's hidden, and more she thinks she buried.
You just bought a ticket to watch your marriage burn, but the fire was already lit.
The investigation was active. Daniel now had a clock ticking and no way to unring the bell. 6 days later, Marcus Webb placed 2 fingers on a map of Cyprus and pushed it across the desk.
Her real birth name is Maria Demetria, born in Nicosia, 1960. She entered the US on a fiancé visa under a different identity.
Rachel was never Rachel. The woman who kissed me this morning was invented before we met.
He set an immigration form on the desk. The photograph was undeniably Rachel. The name field read Maria Demetriou.
How does a woman swap identities and marry under a false name without anyone noticing?
She applied for a legal name change 10 years before you met. The original visa was issued to Maria. The Rachel Reeves identity was layered on top.
She was a ghost before I ever held her, and I invited the ghost into my home. What else don't I know? You found a birth certificate. That's a name. I need the why.
The why takes longer. I'll dig into family connections, financial footprints. Don't react yet, Daniel.
Don't react. As if that's still possible now.
Marcus Webb laid a bank statement on the desk. A tidy column of quarterly wire transfers stretched across the page.
These are outgoing transfers from an account in your wife's name to a bank in Limassol, Cyprus. Like clockwork.
She's been funneling money out of the country for years. That's not a hobby. That's a system.
He produced incorporation documents. A shell company named Aurelius Imports, registered in a tax haven with Rachel listed as director.
Her jewelry business isn't just a side shop, it's a pass-through. Funds flow in from sales, out to Limassol, all through this shell.
Tax evasion. Money laundering. Anything was possible now. What are we looking at, Marcus? Smuggling. Sanctions busting.
I can't call it criminal yet, but the structure is textbook offshore concealment. She's hiding something.
The woman who folds laundry in our living room is running a financial ghost operation, and I never saw it.
The investigation had just cracked open a door Daniel didn't know existed, and on the other side, shadows were moving. Daniel joined Rachel at the dinner table. The clink of silverware was the only sound for a long, uncomfortable minute.
He saw her again in that studio, fingers precise, cataloging purchases that fed a secret account.
At dinner, he waited until she refilled her wine. Then he spoke.
Your craftsmanship is getting noticed. I saw you were shipping pieces overseas. That must be exciting.
Oh, just a few small orders. Nothing special. Why do you ask?
Her fingers turned the stem of her glass. A tell she'd never been aware of. Daniel cataloged it.
Which countries? I'm curious. Your designs have a Mediterranean feel sometimes, like the Aegean coast.
I ship to a few galleries. It's really just paperwork. You wouldn't find it interesting at all.
The clink of forks filled the silence. She didn't ask him how his day was, not once.
She just lied to my face, and it was as smooth as a practiced signature, like she'd done it 100 times.
The next afternoon, when Rachel said she was running errands, Daniel waited 10 seconds and followed. He kept 3 cars back. The route led to the jewelry district, nowhere else. She parked and walked inside. Daniel watched, fingernails pressing into the steering wheel. 15 minutes later, she emerged. The shop owner stood in the doorway, watching her leave.
Who is he? A supplier or something else?
She carried a small jeweler's parcel. Just a deck of cards, probably, but Daniel's mind spun.
Everything about her was compartmentalized. Even a simple errand had locked doors.
He didn't follow her home. He sat in the car, engine off, letting the afternoon shadows lengthen.
This is how it starts. You follow someone for truth, then you follow because you can't trust the air they breathe.
That night, he listened to her hum in the studio, a foreign melody, like a lullaby from a country he'd never see. A text from Marcus arrived at 7:12 a.m., 3 words, "Need to meet. It's more complicated." An hour later, Daniel stood in Marcus's office, staring at the pin still stuck in Limassol.
The Limassol account isn't a shell for money laundering. It's a family account held jointly by Elena Demetrio.
He slid a photograph across the desk. A woman with familiar cheekbones. This is her sister.
The same dark hair, the same curve of smile. He'd never known Rachel had a sister.
The transfers lined up with Athena Demetriou's hospital bills. Her mother needed major surgery 10 years ago.
He opened the file. Records of hospital visits, bills stamped paid by quarterly remittances.
So she built a fake name, a fake business, a fake life. Just to pay her mother's medical bills?
It's not false. She hid it. Her sister Elena lives there, but Rachel carried the financial weight.
All that secrecy was for family, and he'd never been invited to know they existed.
Daniel went to his office. Rachel was asleep. He pulled a worn album from the shelf. The wedding photo. Her smile radiant, veil lifting in a forgotten breeze. He searched her eyes for Maria.
You told me your parents died before we met, but you were hiding a mother and sister across the sea.
He traced the edges. Every anniversary, every Sunday morning, now felt like a scene he'd misread.
Did you ever almost tell me, then pull back because you saw judgment I didn't know I had?
He turned pages. Photos of her laughing at the beach carried a hidden Mediterranean echo.
Through the glass of a different name, the picture shattered into 2 women.
At 2 a.m., he set the album aside. The safe sat in the corner, holding the secret that unspooled everything.
If she walked in, he wouldn't know what to say. Accuse, console, or just watch her lie again.
He didn't sleep. He watched the lamp burn lower, counting the ways a marriage could be true and false at once. The morning light was gray when Daniel pushed open Marcus Webb's door without a call ahead. He didn't need one.
I cross-checked the surgery date with her entry stamps. She was in Nicosia 2 days before the operation.
Medical file and photocopied stamp pages sat side by side, twin proofs of a life he was never part of.
My wife flew across the ocean to hold her mother's hand, and I didn't know the woman had fingers.
The procedure took 11 hours. She stayed 6 weeks. The passport pages from that quarter have no other stamps.
Marcus pointed to a map. A red line connected the airport to the family home on the coast.
The anger didn't vanish, it folded inward. She bore that weight alone because she couldn't imagine sharing it. How many times? How many times did she vanish into that other life?
I found 3 additional trips aligned with hospital admissions. She never missed a crisis.
He walked out of the office. The sun was higher, but the chill inside him had settled in for the season. In the quiet of Marcus Webb's office, the black dossier waited on the desk, closed like an unspoken verdict.
This is everything. No edits. No omissions. You wanted the truth, and now it sits on the table.
The truth had a physical weight in his chest, pressing down before he even touched the paper.
He lifted the folder. Inside, bank statements, passport photos, medical files, the sum of a life she had locked away.
Is there any crime in this file, or just a woman doing whatever it took to survive?
She's legally clean, but she hid a living, breathing family from you for 33 years. That's a debt of its own.
Parallel existence. The phrase was a verdict. Not guilty of fraud, but guilty of a silence that filled a house.
He set the folder back on the desk, but his fingers stayed, as if letting go might lose something irretrievable.
He knew her now better than any living soul, and she had no idea that her whole other world was captured in his hands.
He walked through the door, the dossier under his arm like a small, heavy casket. The door clicked shut behind him. That evening, Daniel sat alone in his study, the black dossier on his lap like an anchor.
He opened it and stared at Elena's face, a sister he would have welcomed if only she'd been offered. He hadn't been a tyrant, hadn't been cold, but had he ever built a bridge wide enough for her secrets to cross? He recalled years of dinner tables where conversations circled work, not wounds, because wounds required trust, and trust required time he never made. She protected him from the weight of her world, or perhaps she protected herself from the possibility that he wouldn't care.
He set the dossier down and walked to the safe, running his fingers over the cold metal where the passport had lain.
One discovery had fractured the architecture of 33 years, and now he wasn't sure if the fractures were new or if he'd just never looked. He turned to the wedding photograph, the one where she looked impossibly happy. Who was standing beside her in that image, him or a shadow? He whispered into the empty room, "Why didn't you trust me?" The question hung like smoke. He knew he would have to ask her directly, but first, he needed to know if his own hands were clean.
The next morning, Daniel walked into a stationery store and selected a single cream envelope from the shelf.
He chose plain stock, no watermark, as if he were mailing a thank you note, not a confession wrapped in a question.
At his desk, he wrote a note in careful script. "Rachel, we should talk. Meet me at the Gables. Just the two of us. D."
He slipped the passport inside and sealed the envelope, the weight of it pressed into his palm.
He dialed Rachel's number. She answered on the third ring, her voice light and unsuspecting. He kept his own voice steady.
"Rachel, I've been thinking. Let's have dinner tonight. Just us, the Gables, 7 o'clock. I'll make the reservation."
There was a pause on her end, then a quiet yes. He caught a flicker of something curiosity, or the faintest alarm. He called the Gables and booked a quiet corner. The maître d' wrote Reeves, 2, 7 p.m. in the reservation book.
Everything was set. The envelope was sealed. The table was waiting. All that remained was what he'd say when she opened it.
He placed the envelope in his jacket pocket. The fabric bulged slightly, a secret shaped like a rectangle. Daniel arrived at the Gables 20 minutes early. The valet took the sedan without a word. Inside, he was led to a corner table. A candle flickered in a glass holder, its flame doubled in his water glass.
His hand trembled as he lifted the glass. He set it down hard, willing himself still.
At 7 o'clock, Rachel appeared in the doorway. She wore the cream blouse he had given her on their last anniversary.
Daniel, you look like you're waiting for a verdict.
"Just hungry. You look beautiful tonight."
She ordered the wine, a vintage from the same year as their 10th anniversary. He noticed, said nothing.
I'm glad you called. It's been months since we had an evening alone.
She's happy. No idea the envelope in his pocket held a country she'd never let him visit.
They spoke of her new commission, the garden, normal things. The envelope pressed into his ribs like a second heartbeat. The main course plates were carried away, and Daniel's hand slipped into his jacket, emerging with the cream envelope. He set it beside her wineglass. The candle flame dipped and straightened, as though reacting to the sudden density in the air.
What is this? Her voice came out smaller than he'd ever heard from her.
She lifted the flap, her fingers steady until they touched the dark blue passport inside. Then they trembled. She pulled it out, the gold lettering catching the candlelight, and the color bled from her face.
She stared at the cover, then at Daniel. Daniel, where did you get this?
It was in our safe. I thought you might explain what it's doing there.
She opened it to the photo page, her own face, the name Maria. A choked sound escaped her throat. The passport fell open on the table. She pressed both hands to her mouth, tears spilling over her knuckles.
Tell me everything, Rachel. His voice was soft but absolute, a blade wrapped in calm.
Rachel's hands fell from her face. The words came in a whisper, as if she had rehearsed them 1,000 times in a private dark.
My real name is Maria Demetriou. I have a sister, Elena. She lives in Limassol. Our mother, Athena, she needed surgery. I couldn't let her die because I had no money. The jewelry business, it was never a hobby. Every piece, every shipment, every penny went to Cyprus. I built it so they could survive. I was afraid, Daniel. I thought if you knew where I came from, what I was carrying, you'd look at me like I was a problem you inherited.
He heard the fear that had lived in his house longer than he had.
I didn't want you to see me as a charity case. Or worse, a liar from the beginning.
The waiter ghosted by, refilled their water, and vanished. Neither of them noticed.
He didn't ask the full question, not yet. Instead, he said, "How many trips?"
4, 5. I went when Mama was critical. The stamps don't lie.
She had admitted the structure, but the why, the trust she never gave, still sat between them like a third guest.
Daniel leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "Why didn't you trust me?"
Rachel opened her mouth to answer, but only a small, broken exhale escaped. The silence after felt like a verdict.
He saw it then. She was still hiding behind the fear of his judgment.
The candle flame shuddered. A waiter passed, saw their faces, and turned away.
I didn't know how to let you in without showing you all the weight I carried.
His voice was tired. "All these years, and you never once tested whether I'd catch you."
Testing would have risked losing you. I'd rather have half you than none.
Half a marriage. He hadn't known he was married to a fragment.
The envelope lay between them, emptied of its secret but now holding the weight of 33 years. Neither of them moved to leave. The table had become a lifeboat, but the sea was already inside it.
The woman you married isn't Rachel. She never was. Rachel is a name I chose from a library book when I was 22.
Daniel's fingers curled around his water glass. He didn't interrupt.
I entered the U.S. on a fiancé visa under my real name, Maria Demetriou. The man who sponsored me left 2 months later. I had no family, no money, just a visa that was about to expire. I bought a new identity. It wasn't hard in the late 80s. I became Rachel Reeves, a woman with no past and no anchor. By the time I met you, Maria was a ghost I'd almost forgotten.
Almost forgotten, until a mother's surgery demanded a passport with the right name.
When Mama's cancer returned, I couldn't use my Rachel passport. I had to be Maria again. I went back to Cyprus, to the family I'd hidden from you, and I paid for her surgery with money from a business you thought was my little hobby.
The passport stamps she'd re-entered the country with, those weren't secret adventures. They were the breadcrumbs of a woman running between two lives.
Every lie I told you was to keep that wall standing. I thought if you saw Maria, you'd see a woman who didn't belong in your world.
Daniel reached across the table and closed the passport gently. I need to understand, he said, his voice stripped of anger.
He didn't offer forgiveness in that moment. He offered the one thing she'd never given him, his presence in her hidden story.
After a long silence, Daniel spoke, each word measured. I see why you did it. I see the sacrifice. But the silence, the years of it, sits in my chest like a stone I can't swallow.
Rachel nodded, her eyes raw. I don't expect you to. I only wanted you to know it wasn't malice. It was fear.
I think we need to live apart. Time to see what's left when the gaslight goes out.
A small sob escaped her, but she held his eyes. Okay, Daniel, no lawyers, no fight.
They sat for another minute, the candle now a puddle of wax. The quiet between them felt like the first honest thing in years.
Daniel stood and left cash on the table. He held out his hand. She took it, her grip feather-light.
They walked out together, but at the sidewalk, Rachel paused, touching his sleeve with 2 fingers.
Thank you for not hating me. She didn't wait for a reply, turning left toward her car.
I never could hate you. I just don't know how to live with a stranger I loved for 30 years.
She walked east. He walked west. The restaurant door swung shut behind them, sealing a room that held the last of their marriage. He walked into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. Rachel's side was still made.
One small circle of gold. 33 years reduced to a scratch on his finger.
He stood and walked to the dresser, pulling open the small drawer.
He held the ring up to the lamp. It caught light the way it had on their wedding day.
He set the ring inside, beside the old leather watch strap, and closed the drawer without a sound.
The drawer muffled the soft click, but the house seemed to hold its breath. He didn't want to throw it away. That would be throwing away the love that had been real.
He sat down again, the mattress dipping under his weight.
He would keep the ring in the drawer, not on his finger and not in the trash. A marker of what was.
He sat until the streetlight through the window became the only light left in the room. 6 months later, Daniel stood at the departure gate, his carry-on the only luggage he needed. The board listed Larnaca, Cyprus. He'd only seen the name in a stolen passport, but now it was a destination.
He hadn't told Rachel. This wasn't reunion. It was a pilgrimage to see what she'd kept in shadow.
The flight was long. He accepted the meals, the drink cart, the hum of engines. None of it registered.
Her path through the sky. He was following it, finally, when it was too late to walk beside her.
Through the window, the Mediterranean stretched into view, a blue that hurt the eyes.
All those years, this sea was her secret view. He'd known only the wall of their house.
The plane descended, and he felt the weight of a decision made without anger.
He was here to see Elena and Athena, to understand her sacrifice and what he had lost.
The cabin door opened, and Daniel stepped into a country he'd only known from a passport page.
You must be Daniel. Maria described you so often, I feel I already know the silver in your hair.
And yet I knew nothing of you. I came to see what she couldn't tell me.
She built a bridge across the sea with nothing but jewelry and silence. She was terrified you'd burn it.
They walked along the rocky path, Elena pointing out the church where Maria was baptized, the school where she learned her first English. The white veranda overlooked the sea. Bougainvillea climbed the trellis, and a small figure waited in the shade.
You came. She said you never would. Thank you for proving a mother's fear wrong.
She carried more than I ever knew. I'm only beginning to understand.
The love she hid out of love. That doesn't make it right, but it makes it real.
They shared a simple lunch, olives, bread, and white cheese. No questions, just the quiet of acceptance. As the sun dropped, Daniel felt something shift, not closure, but a door open where a wall had stood. He returned to the house at dusk. The rooms exhaled cold air, as if holding a breath.
He sat on the bed, the mattress yielding to the same shape it had for months.
Then he rose and pulled open the small drawer. The gold ring lay exactly where he'd left it. It caught the lamp's edge, a last glint of a lifetime now stored among small things.
He didn't touch it. The space was enough.
He slid the drawer shut, the soft click settling into the floorboards. He remembered standing on the shore at Limassol, the wind tangling his hair. In his mind, the sea still glittered under the Cypriot sun, indifferent and eternal.
She had kept that sea for herself. Now he understood why.
The ring would stay in the drawer, not on his finger, not in the trash. A marker of a story that still had salt on its pages.